Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is for you. Welcome to Meditations and Transformations number 6. And I welcome each and every one of you into the futures consciousness that is inside all of us and that belongs to all of us. As we do in every one of these videos, I want to start off with some short definitions of why are we talking about transformations? What do you mean, Frank, by meditations and transformations? Transformation is the evolutionary pathway of all living things. Transformational futuring, which is what we center on a lot here, is the expansion of consciousness through anticipatory imagination across and beyond time, space, and experience that reveals emerging novelty and, of course, transformational realities. And then there's transformational development. That is the application of transformational mindsets and pathways among communities and ecosystems that results in environments of empathy, care, love, and wholeness. Now, these videos are primarily for those who are preparing themselves to experience Transformations of Natural Foresight Retreat in September of 2024 at Topsail Farms in Waldoboro, Maine. But of course, they're for everyone who wants to deepen their thinking and their practice of futures thinking and foresight, no matter where they are. So in our last video, we broke down the basic definition of what we call Holoptic Foresight Dynamics. Holoptic Foresight Dynamics, of course, is the base that we can build many things upon of what we present when we come together at our Transformations of Natural Foresight Retreat, but it's just the base. And if you want to know what Holoptic Foresight Dynamics is all about, go watch the video number 5. I won't reiterate there, but I will just say that the dragonfly's eye plays such an important role, and it's such a beautiful metaphor. All of the pixely pieces of the dragonfly's eye that covers the entire head makes up this whole eye that can see up, down, side to side, forwards, backwards, all at the same time, which drastically changes time and space for the dragonfly. And the dragonfly can see time and space in a way that we can't when we only have this simple eye that has a much different scope and scale to it. And so I broke down the definition of Holoptic Foresight Dynamics into 3 pieces. And tonight, well, it's night for me, I'm going to cover just the first part of a 3-part definition for Holoptic Foresight Dynamics. And that first part is that Holoptic Foresight Dynamics is the cooperative evolutionary trait. Why are we talking about evolution here? Why is it so important? And why is it a cooperative evolutionary trait and not just an evolutionary trait? Because the systems that we have in place today that dictate the way that we think about our organizations, our corporations, our businesses, our cities, our societies, our governments, et cetera, they're largely built on the idea of competition. And this goes back a long way to when we first created the idea of evolution and what it means to be a human species and how that unfolds. We have built everything on competition. And so we compete in our organizations, and we compete in our cities, and we compete as nations, which aren't even real. But we've made these national boundaries to compete against one another, compete against different parts of our species. We're competing against nature. And this is not the way that life works. Life actually works through cooperation. Now, I know that you're probably thinking to yourself, haven't you read about evolutionary theory? Don't you know that it's based on competition? And I'm here to tell you that that's not true. I'm not saying there's no such thing as competition. But life actually works on cooperation. Evolution itself moves from competition as an immature state to cooperation as a mature state. And in reality, competition, even in living systems, is only present as a part of cooperation. So that as we move into greater maturity, we see what wants to cooperate the most and other things are put aside. If things don't cooperate, then they are competed out of existence so that things can move into cooperation. Cooperation opens up greater possibilities and potentials biologically, psychologically, and sacredly. And we could walk into ideas about biocentrism, biocosmology, and poetic systems, and you would see cooperation is across all of those dynamics. As a matter of fact, Robert Rosen, talking about anticipatory systems, really pointed out scientifically that anticipatory systems are cooperative, not competitive. We've gotten stuck in these cooperative systems, and we've missed out on the value our competitive systems, and we've missed out on the value of cooperation. And so there's a beautiful book that was recently written by Thomas Suddendorf called The Invention of Tomorrow, A Natural History of Foresight. And in the book, he shows scientifically that our species, the human species, and actually all living things, all of the cosmos, have this natural trait of futures thinking or foresight. This ability through evolutionary stacking of mental time travel or of chronesthesia to be able to travel forward in our minds neurologically, cognitively, biologically, to be able to think about future events or the not yet, and then to bring those experiences into the present to act on them in the present. Now, what's that got to do is you can see how that has a lot to do with evolution and why evolution is such an important aspect. That's why we created the natural foresight framework, and natural foresight is really based on evolutionary dynamics. But what's that got to do with cooperation? Well, everything. Because this is not just an individual trait, an innate individual evolutionary trait, but as we move evolutionarily from the individual to the collective to the collaborative, we move into cooperative states of evolution that allows us to activate whatever was at the individual level to the cooperative level. And when we cooperate, there is greater potential and greater possibility, just like the dragonfly's eye. The many diverse parts remaining diverse, that's important because diversity breeds creativity. It's not cookie cutter parts. They are diverse pieces. And all of those diverse pieces come together, and the sum is greater than the parts. The sum, the whole, is greater than the sum of the parts. And that whole is a beautiful, emerging, unique expression that reveals more than the individual parts could. And so when those diverse parts come together, they birth a cooperative wholeness. And in that cooperative evolutionary state is a greater trait of holoptic, the many multi-eyed, the many-eyed whole, evolutionary trait of foresight. We might be able to practice foresight as individuals, but when we understand the diverse parts coming together to make the cooperative, emerging, unique whole, then our foresight is amplified. It is greater than the parts. It makes a unique whole, a holoptic whole. It is the Italian artist, philosopher, poet, thinker, writer, Levi, who said that the future has an ancient heart, and that ancient heart is the cooperative evolutionary trait that allows us to have the ability to implement foresight and futures thinking, not as some faraway thing, not the identification of trends and pieces to only amplify the competitive nature of things, but rather to come together to understand, and this will be the next part of our definition, what wants to emerge. It's in a cooperative evolutionary trait that we will understand part 2 of our definition, how to perceive what wants to emerge. That's Holoptic Foresight. I hope that you've gained something from this short video. On our next video, we'll dive into the perception of emerging novelties as a part of Holoptic Foresight Dynamics. And until then, take care. I'll see you soon.